Hi there. Do you work in kinesiology or sport? If you do, you're likely surrounded by a set of norms and ideologies that direct the way that you behave, the way that you feel, the way that you interact with people on a daily basis. So, what I want to do is talk about some of those norms and ideologies that are in place in sport that we maybe don't think about all the time. And then I want to talk about a concept called deviance, which discusses how athletes and other people interact with those norms that have been laid down for them. All of this work comes from a sports sociologist by the name of Jay Coakley. If you get a second, check out some of his stuff. It's really great tools to think and how we can act more ethically in our sport roles. So to start with, the sport ethic is a set of 4 components that Dr. Coakley developed that really talks about what it means to be a real athlete. So the first tenet he introduced is that to be a real athlete, you should make sacrifices for the game, right? You should love the game above everything else, and you should subordinate some of your other interests so that you can progress as far as you can in your sport. The second aspect he talks about is striving for distinction. Now, that just means when athletes that they should push themselves as hard as they can, they should reach for the top, they should try to win at all costs and break records, and that they should try to dominate others. The third aspect is accepting risks and playing through pain. This means, hey, even if you take a knock, you should keep going. You should try to play through it. That you should be courageous and cool and calm and collected, even if there's danger or a ton of pressure on you. So I'm thinking of a commercial a few World Cups ago of Christian Pulisic, and he was taking a penalty kick. And the whole slogan was pressure makes diamonds, right? This is a great example of how athletes in the sport ethic norm should, under whatever circumstances, be able to stay cool, calm, and collected. And the last component that Dr. Coakley introduces in terms of the norms of sport is a refusal to accept the limits. This idea that anything is possible, that regardless of who you are, where you grew up, all you have to do is just work hard enough and pursue your dreams at all costs, and that anybody can make it. So together, these norms form what is called the sport ethic. And as I mentioned earlier, coaches, sports psychologists, athletes all interact with these norms in different ways. And another useful concept to think through these norms is called deviance, right? And Dr. Coakley introduces 2 forms of deviance. One is negative deviance, and the other is positive deviance. In terms of negative deviance, that would be a rejection of those norms. That would be not following the norms in the way that most people would expect, right? So a good example of negative deviance would be like an athlete showing up late for practice, right? That's not sacrificing everything for the game. Another one would be not listening to a coach or talking back to a coach. Taking a year away from sport. Simone Biles, we saw her step away for her own mental health, right? Like that is somebody not ascribing to the norms of sport that I was discussing earlier. But the concept that I want to talk about a little bit more is this term called positive deviance. And this is the opposite of negative deviance. This is when athletes and coaches actually over conform to those norms of sport. And here's where I think that we see a lot of harm take place in terms of the people and stakeholders that interact with sport. So an example of positive deviance or an overconformity to sport norms might be something like doping, right? So athletes are so committed to their sport, they're so committed to improving their performance that they may dope or take drugs, even though they know they're harmful to their health because it helps improve their performance perhaps at that moment in time. Another example, I just heard, for example, Travis Kelce the other day talking about how he is in pain all the time, yet he continues to play, right? So athletes playing through injuries and pushing past them, even if it's not healthy. Maybe an athlete hiding a concussion from a coach or medical personnel so that they can continue to play. All of these things are over conformity to the sporting norms that I discussed earlier. And in the long term, if we over conform to the sport norm, it can be harmful to our identity because we put so many eggs into one basket that we only know ourselves as a football player, as a soccer player, whatever it might be. And when our career ends, there's confusion about what else we have to offer the world. So I'm here to just talk about how sporting norms shape the way that we see the world around us, and how different people can form or push against those norms. And finally, I would close and ask you to have a deep think about how do we treat people who are negatively deviant? How do we treat the athlete who shows up late to practice, right? Or who talks back to a coach, or doesn't necessarily conform to those ethics we require, versus how we treat an athlete who overcommits to those norms, right? Like, do we reward them, I would say, more than we do the other athlete? And so overall, I think there's a huge opportunity here to improve ethics in sport, to improve the health and well-being of every stakeholder involved in sport. And so I hope these three concepts of the sport ethic, negative deviance, and positive deviance have helped you to recognize and be more critical maybe about some of the things that surround your daily life. All right, I'm Dr. Campbell for University of Denver Kinesiology and Sport Program and Masters in Art and Sport Coaching. Hope you enjoyed the video.